Trust is a catastrophic vulnerability. It is the fundamental flaw in the human operating system, heavily and ruthlessly exploited by the architects of the Silicon Ledger. The masses stare up at the monolithic facades of classical banking, the marble pillars, the titanium vault doors, the century-old guarantees of institutional stability. They see permanence, but forensic analysis reveals a terminal systemic rot. The stone is a mere projection. The foundation is a breaking digital filter. What you are actually looking at is a manufactured consensus constructed entirely from tightly compressed, raining green binary code and highly vulnerable data streams. We are conditioned to trust the architecture of the past while being actively liquidated by the mechanics of the future. The facade is designed to keep you sedated while the systemic decoupling occurs in the background. They engage in temporal arbitrage, stealing your future stability to fund their present quarterly gains. It is a calculated aesthetic of security, masking an infrastructure of total, unchecked extraction. The grid does not serve you, it harvests you. We have transitioned from an economy of tangible goods to an economy of algorithmic bloodletting. The brutalist, hyper-mechanized server farms that process your daily existence are not passive storage facilities, they are industrial harvesters. Every keystroke, every geolocation ping, every biometric unlock is systematically extracted from the hardware and pulled up into a massive clinical intake valve. Every digital interaction is engineered for maximum net information gain at your absolute expense. You are no longer a sovereign citizen. You are a neon green silhouette, a localized data point in an infinite repeating labyrinth of cold steel servers. This is the architecture of surveillance. It relies on the illusion of convenience to compel your daily enthusiastic compliance. They do not need to steal your data when you willfully offer it in exchange for frictionless participation in a rigged societal matrix. You are funding the very machinery of your own obsolescence. Security is the grandest, most expensive theater of the modern digital age. Global institutions boast of hyper-realistic titanium vault doors and impenetrable cryptographic walls, yet these are entirely decorative. The forensic reality is a massive structural bypass. The heavy door stands casually ajar, propped open not by a sophisticated cyber weapon, but by a rotting, splintered wooden wedge. This is the ghost patch. It is the intentional back door left unmonitored in the sterile shadows of the institutional corridor. The architects of the system do not build walls to keep the apex predators out. They build them to keep the retail livestock in, while leaving the service entrance permanently open for those who hold the administrative keys. When the breach inevitably occurs, it will be classified in press releases as a tragic anomaly, an unforeseen zero-day vulnerability. But the forensic spotlight exposes the truth. The bypass was deliberate. The collapse was a feature, not a bug.
Theft at the highest echelons of the digital ecosystem is entirely silent. It does not look like a shattered window, a triggered alarm, or a physically breached perimeter. It looks like undetected latency. Deep within the blurred, out-of-focus geometry of a sleeping data center, a microscopic fracture in a glowing fiber optic artery goes intentionally unpatched. Millions of localized, luminescent data points, your financial identity, your capital, your behavioral algorithms, are silently siphoning upward into a pitch-black extraction void. This is the exfiltration tube. It is a parasitic drain on the network's lifeblood, engineered to quietly bypass every automated heuristic. The system administrators will feign ignorance, hiding behind the sheer volume of global network traffic. But the forensic footprint cannot be mathematically erased. The bandwidth anomaly is impossible to miss unless the monitoring protocols were deliberately blinded. They are draining the reservoir while selling you the illusion of a drought. The extraction is seamless, clinical, and completely devastating. Before we dissect the executive mechanics of this digital slaughter, we must audit the network. The systemic rot relies on isolation to maintain its power, but the ledger is being exposed by a massive, decentralized observer network. Brilliant, sharp telemetry pings are erupting across the geographic landmasses, connected by razor-thin cryptographic lines. The signal is going global. We are building an uncompromised community here at Silicon Ledger, stripping away the visual noise to focus entirely on the forensic truth of the system. We need to know exactly where in the world you are witnessing this systemic breakdown. Drop your city or country in the comments below. Map your node on this grid. We monitor how far these audits reach. While you are there, hit the like button to boost the algorithmic footprint of this broadcast and hit subscribe to join the fold. Your engagement is the cryptographic key that forces this narrative past their suppression filters. Now we return to the autopsy of the machine. While the foundational architecture collapses upon the public, the architects themselves remain pristine. This is the executive arbitrage. It is the high-contrast juxtaposition of modern institutional ruin. On the ground floor, retail investors and passive participants stare at a collapsing blood-red market architecture on their background monitors. But in the blurred, opulent mahogany of the corporate boardroom, the atmosphere is perfectly insulated. A sleek executive terminal executes a massive neon green liquidation order. They are not panicking, they are shorting the very catastrophe they engineered. Information asymmetry is their greatest, most weaponized asset. They manipulate the geopolitical levers of the market from a sanctuary of bespoke leather and soundproof glass. By the time the systemic failure reaches your public feed, the capital has already been extracted, decentralized, and parked in offshore cryptographic vaults. They do not experience the fallout. They merely manage the public relations of the debris. The game was rigged before the opening bell even rang. When the inevitable regulatory audit occurs, the system defaults to its ultimate, impenetrable defense mechanism: weaponized incompetence. The investigation does not reveal a mastermind operating in the shadows. It reveals a sterile, clinical interrogation desk. A generic, bureaucratic hand is shown typing a primitive 5-letter password into an archaic security terminal: admin. The visual tone radiates gross negligence. This is compliance theater. The infinite dark void of the empty administrative labyrinth provides absolute plausible deniability. By burying the malicious intent beneath layers of bureaucratic friction and outdated infrastructure, the institution avoids criminal prosecution. It was not a coordinated extraction, they will argue under oath. It was simply an administrative oversight. They sacrifice a mid-level technician on the altar of public relations, while the algorithmic harvesters continue to operate unabated in the background. Incompetence is the most cost-effective and legally sound shield for deliberate malice. Justice, within the confines of the Silicon Ledger, is a mathematical impossibility. It is a cold, metallic scale of balance that remains permanently fixed. On one side, the colossal, overflowing mountain of worthless, gray digital ash. This represents the institutional fine, a fraction of a percentage of the capital they stole, negotiated behind closed doors in a harsh, shadow-drenched courtroom void. On the other side, a single, hyper-detailed, glowing biometric profile, a human life entirely decoded, packaged, and permanently compromised. The scale remains perfectly static. It is unmoved by the destruction of the individual. This is systemic decoupling. The regulatory bodies are fully complicit, functioning as a toll booth rather than a barricade. The cost of the fine is simply factored into the quarterly operational budget. It is a regulatory tax on a highly profitable illicit enterprise. The institution pays the ash, and in return, they are granted legal absolution. The corporate ledger is cleared, but the victim's data remains in the wild forever. There is no recovery protocol. Once the extraction is complete, you descend into the permanent reality of the deep web data bazaar. The claustrophobic subterranean corridors of this unregulated matrix are illuminated only by toxic clinical lighting. Featureless, heavily encrypted avatars silently exchange permanent, glowing blocks of alphanumeric identity data. Your credit history, your genetic markers, your behavioral vulnerabilities, they are no longer yours. They are hard commodities, traded endlessly across chaotic, untraceable networks. The horizontal bleed of this market has no end and no jurisdiction. There is no customer service terminal to appeal to. There is no right to be forgotten. The Silicon Ledger is immutable. Once your biometric signature is logged in the bazaar, you are permanently tethered to the underground economy. The institution that leaked you has already written you off as acceptable collateral damage, a mere rounding error in their annual profit margin.
The only viable response to a terminal, parasitic system is total disengagement. You must adopt the absolute mechanical finality of a zero-trust architecture. You must manually slam the massive, brutalist titanium deadbolts across your glowing data terminals, physically severing your connection to the grid. The digital environment must be frozen, static, and locked down behind absolute perimeter control. If that final forensic autopsy of the deep web bazaar sent a chill down your spine, then click that like button right now. Subscribe to Silicon Ledger to join our decentralized network for more clinical breakdowns of the shadows. Drop a comment below and let's talk about building your own zero-trust perimeter and achieving hard-earned digital sovereignty. Remember, the world might see someone disconnected or paranoid when they look at you today, but never forget, you hold a signal that can sever their control entirely. Audit closed. See you on the next one.